Good morning. Today we are going to look at the United States Civil War. We are going to divide this into two parts from 1860 to 1863, the beginning of 1863. As you saw last week, the election of Abraham Lincoln is going to anger the South. They're going to start moving towards secession, with South Carolina being the first one. The Southern view of Lincoln was that he was a radical abolitionist who was going to come and free the slaves, steal their slaves, and destroy the South. And South Carolina will go first, followed quickly by several others, and will form their own government, the Confederate States of America. After several months, there's a whole lot of tension in South Carolina. There is a fort called Fort Sumter. It is in Charleston Harbor, and it is basically cut off from the rest of the country. And for months, from December on, the country watches as the soldiers in Fort Sumter slowly run out of food. And in April, Abraham Lincoln sends ships to go bring them food and other things. And that's going to result in the Battle of April 12th, 1861. The Confederates did not want them to be resupplied. They wanted to take the fort. So they're going to bombard the fort all night. Actually, even though with this picture, it's a really intense battle, there were no casualties during the battle. Unfortunately, after the battle, there was an accident that claimed 2 lives. But during the battle itself, no casualties. Now, war fever in the north and south is going to spread. With the firing actually started, people in the north are mad that the south have attacked the north, or I guess the way they look at it is not necessarily attacking the north, but the United States. And so Lincoln is going to call for thousands of soldiers to join the Union Army, and the South is going to have people join in the Southern Confederate Army or their different state armies, and the armies are going to swell. Uh, they're going to form in various spots, uh, some even in Indiana around Richmond, the capital, or not Richmond, Indianapolis, uh, Cincinnati, and they'll start forming. But the biggest armies, especially early in the war, are going to form around Washington, D.C., and the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia, with the idea mostly that there would be one huge battle. Their side, whoever's side, would win in this cataclysmic battle, and the war would be over. So that was the basic idea. Uh, After several months of sitting around from April till July, Abraham Lincoln finally orders his general, a man named McDowell, to move his army, despite McDowell's um, admonishments that they weren't ready. But Lincoln ordered him to go anyway, and they went down and met at Manassas, Virginia, along the Bull Run Creek. Initially, it goes well for the Union, but things turn later in the day with the um, addition of new, fresh Confederate troops. And the Union Army is going to, in a lot of cases, literally run all the way back to Washington, D.C., about 20 miles. And dropping their equipment, as you see in this picture, it was a panic. So, to the people in the North, they realized this is not going to be one battle and done, since they lost and they weren't prepared to be done. In the North, or in the South rather, even though they won, their army it was a big battle. It was very disruptive. They were not in any uh, state to continue the fight after the Union ran away. So it was obvious to both sides that it's going to be a longer battle, a longer war. Just how long, nobody was sure. So they're going to issue more calls for more troops, and the war will continue. Now, between Bull Run and September of 1862, which I'll talk about in a moment, there is a series of battles in Virginia, along the North Carolina coast, down in New Orleans along the Mississippi River, in Tennessee, hundreds of battles, little, big, um, many of them hugely bloody. And the North largely loses most of them, especially in the Eastern Theater, which is between Richmond and Washington, D.C. At some point, even um, the Northern leaders were worried that um, other countries, such as France and Spain and Russia, may come in and help out the Confederacy because it didn't look like the North could win and it looked like the South was going to become its own country, and that would be a problem. So one of the things Lincoln thought would be a good idea was to end slavery for many reasons, obviously. To end the slavery, the South used slaves for labor, which their soldiers then didn't have to do, and they could have more soldiers for fighting. Uh, Also, the European powers I just mentioned did not approve of slavery, and they thought if they abolished slavery, they would not want to go and back the South as a slave holding nation once the war was kind of pointed towards the idea of ending slavery. But all of Lincoln and all of his advisors, as you see in this picture, they came up with the idea that if you can't win a battle, and you try to free the slaves, it's going to seem like a desperate act and not a sincere act. So Lincoln agreed to wait for a battlefield win. That win will come in September of 1862, September 17th, 1862, in a town of Sharpsburg, Maryland, along the Antietam Creek. It's going to be the one of the biggest battles of the war. It is fiercely fought, and by the end of the day, it becomes one of the bloodiest days in all of American history. 23,000 casualties, 3,600 killed outright that day. Here's a few of the pictures after the battle, being that it was in Maryland, closer to Washington, D.C. Some photographers went there to photograph the battlefield. And so we see the pictures with casualties and the desolation of the battlefield. This huge battle, though, when it was all over, the Union held the battlefield, the Confederates retreated, and it was a Confederate loss. This battle is going to give Lincoln the chance he wants, and it issues the Emancipation Proclamation, emancipating the slaves. So 3 weeks later in October. It's not going to take place until January 1863, and if they can't win the war, it may not happen at all. So that's where we're going to stop for today. And tomorrow I'll have an assignment on the Emancipation Proclamation, I believe. And we'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye.